Wessex was an Anglo-Saxon kingdom in the south of Great Britain, from 519 until England was unified by Aethelstan in the early 10th century. The Anglo-Saxons believed that Wessex was founded by Cerdic and Cynric, but this may be legend. The two main sources for the history of Wessex are the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and the West Saxon genealogical regnal list, which sometimes conflict. Wessex became a Christian kingdom after Cenwalh was baptized and was expanded under his rule. Cadwalla later conquered Sussex, Kent and the Isle of Wight. His successor, Ine, issued one of the oldest surviving English law codes and established a second West Saxon bishopric. The throne subsequently passed to a series of kings with unknown genealogies. During the 8th century, as the hegemony of Mercia grew, Wessex largely retained its independence. It was during this period that the system of shires was established. Under Egbert, Surrey, Sussex, Kent, Essex, and Mercia, along with parts of Dumnonia, were conquered. He also obtained the overlordship of the Northumbrian king. However, Mercian independence was restored in 830. During the reign of his successor, Aethelwulf, a Danish army arrived in the Thames estuary, but was decisively defeated. When Aethelwulf's son, Aethelbald, usurped the throne, the kingdom was divided to avoid war. Aethelwulf was succeeded in turn by his 4 sons, the youngest being Alfred the Great. Wessex was invaded by the Danes in 871, and Alfred was compelled to pay them to leave. They returned in 876, but were forced to withdraw. In 878 they forced Alfred to flee to the Somerset Levels, but were eventually defeated at the Battle of Edington. During his reign Alfred issued a new law code, gathered scholars to his court and was able to devote funds to building ships, organizing an army and establishing a system of burghs. Alfred's son, Edward, captured the Eastern Midlands and East Anglia from the Danes and became ruler of Mercia in 918 upon the death of his sister, Aethelflaed. Edward's son, Aethelstan, conquered Northumbria in 927, and England became a unified kingdom for the first time. Cnut the Great, who conquered England in 1016, created the wealthy and powerful earldom of Wessex. But in 1066 Harold Godwinson reunited the earldom with the crown and Wessex ceased to exist. Background: the early 4th century was a peaceful time in Roman Britain. However, following a previous incursion in 360 that was stopped by Roman forces, the Picts and Scots attacked Hadrian's Wall in 367 and defeated the soldiers stationed there. They devastated many parts of Britain and laid siege to London. The Romans responded promptly, and Count Theodosius had recovered the land up to the wall by 368. The Romans temporarily ceased to rule Britain upon the death of Magnus Maximus in 388. Stilicho attempted to restore Roman authority in the late 390s, but in 401 he took Roman troops from Britain to fight the Goths. 2 subsequent Roman rulers of Britain, appointed by the remaining troops, were murdered. Constantine III became ruler, but he then left for Gaul and withdrew more troops. The Britons then requested assistance from Honorius, but when he replied in 410 he told them to manage their own defences. By this point, there were no longer any Roman troops in Britain. Economical decline occurred after these events, circulation of Roman coins ended and the importation of items from the Roman Empire stopped. In an introduction to Anglo-Saxon England, Peter Hunter Blair divides the traditions concerning the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Britain into 2 categories: Welsh and English. The Directio Conquestu Britanniae, written by Gildas, contains the best preservation of the Welsh tradition. In brief, it states that after the Romans left, the Britons managed to continue for a time without any major disruptions. However, when finally faced with northern invaders, a certain unnamed ruler in Britain requested assistance from the Saxons in exchange for land. There were no conflicts between the British and the Saxons for a time. But following a dispute about the supply of provisions, the Saxons warred against the British and severely damaged parts of the country. In time, however, some Saxon troops left Britain. Under Ambrosius Aurelianus, the British subsequently defeated those who remained. A lengthy conflict ensued, in which neither side gained any decisive advantage until the Britons routed the Saxons at the Battle of Mons Badonicus. After this, there occurred a peaceful period for the Britons, under which Gildas was living at the time he wrote the De Excidio et Conquestu Britanniae. One of the English traditions about the Saxon arrival is that of Hengist and Horsa. When Bede wrote his ecclesiastical history of the English people, he adapted Gildas' narrative and added details, such as the names of those involved. To the proud tyrant, he gave the name Vortigern, and the Saxon commanders he named Hengist and Horsa. Further details were added to the story in the Historia Brittonum, which was partially written by Nennius. According to the Historia, Hengist and Horsa fought the invaders of Britain under the condition of gaining the island of Thanet. The daughter of Hengist, Rowena, later arrived on a ship of reinforcements, and Vortigern married her. However, a war arose in Kent due to a dispute between Hengist and Vortigern's son. After losing several battles, the Saxons finally defeated the British by treacherously attacking them once the two parties had convened for a meeting. Some additional details of the Hengist and Horsa legend are found in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The Chronicle then records subsequent Saxon arrivals, including that of Cerdic, the founder of Wessex, in 495. Saxon settlement. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the primary written source for the founding of Wessex, states that Cerdic and Cynric landed in Britain with 5 ships in 495. Although the entry mentions Cynric as Cerdic's son, a different source lists him as the son of Cerdic's son, Creoda. Their place of landing is believed to be around southern Hampshire, but despite being extensively explored by archaeologists, there have been no finds in the area which are suggestive of early Anglo-Saxon settlement. Using information obtained from a bishop, Bede recorded that Wessex was inhabited by Jutes and was only annexed by Wessex in the late 7th century, under Cadwalla. The Chronicle continues, stating that Port and his 2 sons, Beada and Maegla, landed at Portsmouth in 501 and killed a high-ranking British nobleman. In 508, Cerdic and Cynric slew a British king named Natan Laud and 5,000 men with him, but Natan Laud is believed to have been fictional. The Saxons attacked Cirencesford in 519, intending to cross the River Avon and block a road which connected Old Sarum and Badbury Rings, a British stronghold. The battle appears to have ended as a draw, and the expansion of Wessex ended for about 30 years. This is likely due to losses suffered during the battle and an apparent peace agreement with the Britons. The Battle of Mons Badonicus is believed to have been fought around this time. Gildas states that the Saxons were completely defeated in the battle, in which King Arthur participated according to Nennius. This defeat is not recorded in the Chronicle. The 30-year period of peace was temporarily interrupted when, according to the Chronicle, the Saxons conquered the Isle of Wight in 530 at a battle near Carisbrooke. Cynric became the ruler of Wessex after Cerdic died in 534, and reigned for 26 years. It is presumed that Ceawlin, who succeeded Cynric in about 581, was his son. Ceawlin's reign is thought to be more reliably documented than those of his predecessors, though the Chronicle's dates of 560 to 592 are different from the revised chronology. Ceawlin overcame pockets of resisting Britons to the northeast, in the Chilterns, Gloucestershire and Somerset. The capture of Cirencester, Gloucester and Bath in 577, after the pause caused by the Battle of Mons Badonicus, opened the way to the southwest. Ceawlin is one of the 7 kings named in Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people as holding imperium over the southern English. The Chronicle later repeated this claim, referring to Ceawlin as a Bretwalder, or Briton ruler. Ceawlin was deposed, perhaps by his successor, a nephew named Ceol, and died a year later. 6 years later, in about 594, Ceol was succeeded by a brother, Ceolwulf, who was succeeded in his turn in about 617 by Cynegils. The genealogies do not agree on Cynegils' pedigree. His father is variously given as Ceola, Ceolwulf, Ceol, Cuthwine, Cuther or Cuthwulf, Christian Wessex and the rise of Mercia. It is in Cynegils' reign that the first event in West Saxon history that can be dated with reasonable certainty occurs. The baptism of Cynegils by Birinus, which happened at the end of the 630s, perhaps in 640. Birinus was then established as Bishop of the West Saxons, with his seat at Dorchester-on-Thames. This was the first conversion to Christianity by a West Saxon king, but it was not accompanied by the immediate conversion of all the West Saxons. Cynegils' successor, Cenwil, who came to the throne in about 642, was a pagan at his accession. However, he too was baptized only a few years later and Wessex became firmly established as a Christian kingdom. Cynegils' godfather was King Oswald of Northumbria, and his conversion may have been connected with an alliance against King Penda of Mercia, who had previously attacked Wessex. These attacks marked the beginning of sustained pressure from the expanding Kingdom of Mercia. In time this would deprive Wessex of its territories north of the Thames in the Avon, encouraging the kingdom's reorientation southwards. Cenwil married Penda's daughter, and when he repudiated her, Penda again invaded and drove him into exile for some time, perhaps 3 years. The dates are uncertain, but it was probably in the late 640s or early 650s. He spent his exile in East Anglia, and was converted to Christianity there. After his return, Cenwil faced further attacks from Penda's successor Wulfhere, but was able to expand West Saxon territory in Somerset at the expense of the Britons. He established a second bishopric at Winchester, while the one at Dorchester was soon abandoned as Mercian power pushed southwards. Winchester would eventually develop into the effective capital of Wessex. After Cenwil's death in 673, his widow, Sketchy, held the throne for a year. She was followed by Esgwine, who was apparently descended from another brother of Ceawlin. This was one of several occasions on which the kingship of Wessex is said to have passed to a remote branch of the royal family with an unbroken male line of descent from Cerdic. These claims may be genuine, or may reflect the spurious assertion of descent from Cerdic to legitimize a new dynasty. Esgwine's reign only lasted 2 years, and in 676 the throne passed back to the immediate family of Cenwil with the accession of his brother Centwine. Centwine is known to have fought and won battles against the Britons, but the details have not survived. Centwine was succeeded by another supposed distant relative, Cadwalla, who claimed descent from Ceawlin. Cadwalla reigned for just 2 years, but achieved a dramatic expansion of the kingdom's power, conquering the kingdoms of Sussex, Kent and the Isle of Wight, although Kent regained its independence almost immediately and Sussex followed some years later. His reign ended in 688 when he abdicated and went on pilgrimage to Rome, where he was baptized by Pope Sergius I and died soon afterwards. His successor was Ine, who also claimed to be a descendant of Cerdic through Ceawlin, but again through a long separated line of descent. Ine was the most durable of the West Saxon kings, reigning for 38 years. He issued the oldest surviving English code of laws apart from those of the Kingdom of Kent, and established a second West Saxon bishopric at Sherborne, covering the territories west of Selwood Forest. Near the end of his life he followed in Caedwalla's footsteps by abdicating and making a pilgrimage to Rome. The throne then passed to a series of other kings who claimed descent from Cerdic but whose supposed genealogies and relationship to one another are unknown. During the 8th century, Wessex was overshadowed by Mercia, whose power was then at its height, and the West Saxon kings may at times have acknowledged Mercian overlordship. They were, however, able to avoid the more substantial control which Mercia exerted over smaller kingdoms. During this period, Wessex continued its gradual advance to the west, overwhelming the British Kingdom of Dumnonia. At this time, Wessex took de facto control over much of Devon, although Britons retained a degree of independence in Devon until at least the 10th century. As a result of the Mercian conquest of the northern portion of its early territories in Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, the Thames in the Avon now probably formed the northern boundary of Wessex, while its heartland lay in Hampshire, Wiltshire, Berkshire, Dorset and Somerset. The system of shires, which was later to form the basis of local administration throughout England, originated in Wessex, and had been established by the mid-8th century. The hegemony of Wessex and the Viking raids. In 802 the fortunes of Wessex were transformed by the accession of Egbert, who came from a cadet branch of the ruling dynasty that claimed descent from In's brother Ingild. With his accession, the throne became firmly established in the hands of a single lineage. Early in his reign he conducted 2 campaigns against the West Welsh, first in 813 and then again at Gaffelford in 825. During the course of these campaigns he conquered the western Britons still in Devon and reduced those beyond the River Tamar, now Cornwall, to the status of a vassal. In 825 or 826 he overturned the political order of England by decisively defeating King Beornwulf of Mercia at Ellendun and seizing control of Surrey, Sussex, Kent and Essex from the Mercians, while with his help East Anglia broke away from Mercian control. In 829 he conquered Mercia, driving its king Wiglaf into exile, and secured acknowledgement of his overlordship from the King of Northumbria. He thereby became the Bretwalda, or High King of Britain. This position of dominance was short-lived, as Wiglaf returned and restored Mercian independence in 830. But the expansion of Wessex across southeastern England proved permanent. Egbert's later years saw the beginning of Danish Viking raids on Wessex, which occurred frequently from 835 onwards. In 851 a huge Danish army, said to have been carried on 350 ships, arrived in the Thames estuary. Having defeated King Beorhtwulf of Mercia in battle, the Danes moved on to invade Wessex, but were decisively crushed by Egbert's son and successor King Ethelwulf in the exceptionally bloody Battle of Ilkley. This victory postponed Danish conquests in England for 15 years, but raids on Wessex continued. In 855–6 Ethelwulf went on pilgrimage to Rome and his eldest surviving son Ethelbald took advantage of his absence to seize his father's throne. On his return, Ethelwulf agreed to divide the kingdom with his son to avoid bloodshed, ruling the new territories in the east while Ethelbald held the old heartland in the west. Ethelwulf was succeeded by each of his 4 surviving sons, ruling one after another. The rebellious Ethelbald, then Ethelbert, who had previously inherited the eastern territories from his father and who reunited the kingdom on Ethelbald's death, then Ethelred, and finally Alfred the Great. This occurred because the first 2 brothers died in wars with the Danes without issue, while Ethelred's sons were too young to rule when the father died.